Hi, this is Quinlan, and among other things, I am a mountaineering instructor on Mount Fuji in the pre-season. Right now, I am here at the Kitaguchi Hongu Sengen Shrine, which is basically one of the largest shrines dedicated to the god Asama, who is one of the original gods enshrined on Mount Fuji right now. In this video, I would like to tell you 5 things that you should know before you hike Mount Fuji. Before we jump in, let me just add one note, and that is please don't contact me directly about guiding you up Mount Fuji in the pre-season. I do that for work, but it's all through a company which I have linked to in the description. It's not up to me, the schedules, who goes, everything like that. And so if you do want to go in the pre-season, definitely hire a guide, go with an outfit, because you will need to, and I'll get into the reasons in the video. But don't ask me about it, just look at the link in the video. I do work independently and guide in Tohoku. Please do contact me directly if you want me to guide you somewhere in northern Japan or along the MCT trail, that new 1,000-kilometer trail on the Pacific coast. Those things, yes, I can directly respond to, but for Fuji in the pre-season, that all goes through a company that employs me. Thanks. Okay, let's get into it. Number 1, I'm actually gonna say it. Do you really want to hike Mount Fuji? Think about it. Why do you want to do it? Is it just for bragging rights, or is it for the experience? Because I've hiked dozens, more than 100 mountains in Japan, and there are tons of mountains that provide a better experience, better views than Mount Fuji. It seems like for a lot of people, Mount Fuji is a flex or bragging rights thing. It's just, the highest mountain in Japan, the most glorious volcano. And yeah, that's valid, but I think you might get a better view of Mount Fuji, not by hiking it, but by going up Kitadake or even Akadake, one of the mountains that's near Mount Fuji and has an amazing view of it. Also, if you're hiking Mount Fuji, it's going to be incredibly crowded in the normal season. You've probably seen these photos, which is just a parade, lines and lines going up it. And is that really the experience you want? Most of the hikes up the Yoshida Trail, the main trail that you can get to on mass transit that everybody goes, and the one that likely will be the only easy choice if you're going on your own and using public transport, it really is just a parade all the way at the top. There's all these lodges, there are vending machines. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm actually glad that they've started charging as of this season. This coming season, I believe, they'll be charging a few thousand yen per person, and also limiting the numbers of people that go up it, because it's just ridiculous how many people are going up there. I think it detracts from the experience for everyone, and they should limit it. So what about hiking Mount Chokai or Akadake, or going somewhere in the Alps of Japan, the northern or southern Alps, or better still, coming up to Tohoku, to northern Japan, where I guide on a number of epic stratovolcanoes? Okay, you still with me? Then number 2. That would be if you are physically fit, someone who's a runner or an avid hiker, you're young, you're in good condition, and you don't mind walking for 8 or 9 hours, including a lot of ascent and descent, obviously, then consider hiking Mount Fuji in the pre-season between mid-May and mid-June. If you do it this way, it is going to be more expensive, because you're not just going on your own paying for a lodge and mass transit. You're also paying for the transportation to get you there, and a guide instructor, which will cost you some. Again, look into the link in the description or Google it on your own. There are a number of outfits offering this sort of service. But then you would get to go on the route that a lot of people, well, that pretty much everyone takes during that season, which is the Fujinomiya route. The Fujinomiya route is on the south side, so it's less dangerous, especially in those snowy conditions, than the other routes, and it's actually accessible because the road opens up earlier in the year than it does for the other routes. And you can go up and down in the same day reasonably. It's actually not that long. It's just about 10 kilometers even. However, that includes about 1,400-ish gain of ascent and descent. And you're starting at 2,400 meters, which is above the summits of a lot of mountains. And so a lot of people do experience symptoms from the thinner air up there. And so that is something to take into account. You may think 10K, that's nothing, 14 meters up and 1,400 meters up and down, big deal. And fair enough, it may be the case for you, but you will be more tired than usual because of the fact that the summit is at 3,776 meters, which means the air is a bit thinner. And even if you've been okay before at that elevation, as you may know then, every single time is different. And even if you're fine up until now, it may be this next time that it gets to you. If you do hire an outfit to take you up in the pre-season, then they will or should be providing you with helmets an ice axe, and crampons at the very least. Those are pretty much required because there will be snow there, generally speaking, most years. It is now June 4th, and there is a lot of fresh snow on Mount Fuji right now in 2024. I know because I hiked it yesterday and 3 days ago. I've gone up Mount Fuji to the summit twice in the last 3 days. In addition to providing you that gear, there will be the training on how to use it. That's why I said that I'm a mountain instructor on Mount Fuji and not just a guide, because a huge part of taking people up is explaining how to use the ice axe to stop yourself from falling, how to walk with it, how to walk with crampons, things like that, in addition to just good hiking practices. So it makes a huge difference to go up with someone who can make it a good experience for you and give you the highest chance of safely summiting. Okay, number 3 is a tip that doesn't matter whether or not you're hiking in the pre-season or normal season with or without a guide, but that is to put the sunblock on all over the place, especially in the preseason. You've literally got to kind of rub the sunblock up your nostrils because all of that snow reflects it up and you can get burned inside of your nose. Trust me, it's happened to me before and it is no joke. Also, you want to get sunblock for lip cream, something you can put on your lips that's SPF 50 or something. Embarrassing. I spaced it out yesterday when I was taking a group up to the summit of Mount Fuji. I usually am really good about putting everything, but for something in the morning, I hadn't had enough coffee, whatever, I spaced out the sunblock on my lips. And now my lips, maybe you can't see in the video, but they are painfully burned, and it's just licking my lips hurts. I won't forget to put on the SPF on my lips again. So the sunblock is no joke when you're going up that high, and even under the clouds, it will still just burn you up. You absolutely can't forget to have sunglasses and a hat, and then all of those different sunblock things on, God, of course, you know, your neck and your nose and your ears and everything like that. But the thing that you might forget is the lips and your nostrils. Number 4 is a more general hiking tip, but one that is especially relevant for a long hike like Mount Fuji, which is going to be minimum 8.5 hours if you're doing it in the pre-season. And that is to both be constantly drinking little bits of preferably not just water, but some sort of sports drink that's got electrolytes in it. So either having it handy, like attached to the front of your pack, or one of those things that you can sip on, because if you've got it in your pack and you've got to stop and take it off your backpack and get a drink, you're not going to be drinking enough. And if you're not drinking and not snacking with little bits of something that's got salt, like nuts, or chocolates even has enough salt, you will be way more likely to cramp up. One of the best ways to prevent cramping is to be fully hydrated and to be getting enough salts. And number 5 isn't so much a hiking tip as just general historical, cultural, geological information about the mountain. I mean, before you go up this epic, glorious volcano, don't you want to know more about what you're doing? Know more about the history of what it is you're on? So let me just tell you a little bit about that. I personally find the history of the mountain to be one of the more interesting aspects because there is not much in terms of fauna and flora when you hike the mountain because you're starting at the 5th station, which is so high that you're above the tree line already. So Mount Fuji most recently erupted from Hoei-san, or from Mount Hoei, which is near the Fujinomiya, just sort of to the right-hand side of the Fujinomiya trail route. And it erupted there in 1707. And that was such a fierce eruption that they say Edo, present-day Tokyo, was just black with ash. Even that far away. It affected crops, it covered all the soil. We don't have numbers for how many people died, but yes, it was a serious disaster that resulted in many deaths. Before that, the most recent large eruption was way back in 864. And that eruption was even more severe and resulted in so much death and destruction that they built a number of shrines, and it really spurred the religion, the faith in Mount Fuji, of praying to it to avoid future disasters like that. Mount Fuji has, of course, been a sacred mountain for at least 1,200 years, probably 2,000 or more years. Probably as long as there are humans around, they viewed it as a dwelling place of divinities, if not a divinity or a god in and of itself. The religion that for most of Japanese history was focused on the mountain was a syncretism of Buddhism and Shinto. It had a god Asama, which this shrine is enshrining, but who was also viewed as an aspect of Yakushin-Yurai, the medicine Buddha. And throughout the vast majority of Japanese history, people didn't really differentiate between Buddhism and Shinto in the way that you might differentiate between Christianity and Judaism, or Hinduism and Islam, or any other two religions. People in Japan didn't see there being any conflict between having your grave and your family altar devoted to some Buddhist sect, and then also praying at the shrine and having the Shinto priest bless your home, your car, etc., etc. It's still kind of mixed together, but I'll get to the separation in a little bit. On the summit of Mount Fuji, there were Buddhist temples, many Buddhist statues, as well as Shinto shrines. As I said, they weren't so divided. And a lot of the gods of mountains are looked at as simultaneously the same divinity is a god and a bodhisattva in many cases. For a lot of mountains, for example, there is a Daigongen Bosatsu of that mountain, which is a local deity that in Buddhist belief they would say has converted to Buddhism, or is in itself an emanation of the Buddha or one of the main bodhisattvas. However, in 1868, the Boshin War resulted in the dawn of the Meiji era, the return of the emperor to power, and a huge movement against Buddhism. Now they've often framed it as a movement to separate Buddhism and Shinto, the Haibutsu Kishaku movement, but basically it resulted in the destruction of Buddhist statues, burning of temples, and the transformation of many temples into shrines, and the forcing of many Buddhist practitioners to declare themselves as Shinto practitioners instead, whereas before there hadn't been so much of a difference, they were allowed to do both at the same time. And in fact, on the summit of Mount Fuji, if you're able to go all the way around the caldera at the top, the crater, you can still see a number of Buddhist statues that are headless, that have had their heads knocked off and put off to the side outside of the temples. And now there are only shrines on top of Mount Fuji, no more Buddhist temples, as now it's an exclusively Shinto place, because even now that there's no more movement against Buddhism in modern Japan, the changes made in 1868 have stayed. In fact, I think it's so interesting, all the things that changed with Buddhism then, in terms of monks being allowed to marry, eat meat, have children, drink alcohol, all those things, and the way it transformed Buddhism and Shinto, the relationship with each other, people's relationship with the religion, was so interesting. I feel like I want to make a video about that sometime soon, but it's sort of a topic for a long-form podcast more than a video. I don't want to bore you guys with 45 minutes of what I find to be really fascinating history. If you're going to hike Mount Fuji, I recommend in Fuji City, there is the Mount Fuji World Heritage Museum, and it's fantastic. And I think you'll have a great experience if you go there. There's tons of English signage. It's really well done. They have short films you can watch. It's great. So get a good understanding of the mountain before you hike it, so when you're up there, you can really feel the history all around you as you sweat and huff and puff on your way to the highest point in all of Japan. I hope this video has been interesting, even if you have no plans to hike to Mount Fuji, and if you do, good luck to you. I recommend doing some cardio training and working some strength, more strength in your legs and knees before you go. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the trails.